Hey, Diana, you know that AI can run your law firm?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for lawyers and law firm leaders about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my COO, my right hand, my number one, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, how are we doing this morning?
I'm great. How are you?
Well, we are back to doing remote yet again. It's just like a yo-yo. One week we're in live where I like to be, and then the next week we're back to doing remote again. Today it's my fault because I have this stupid medical procedure that I have to go to this afternoon. So working from home. I've also been required to be fasting, and this procedure is not till 12:30. So I have no coffee today, no food, not even supposed to be drinking water, although I'm violating that rule. Like
Mark.
who the hell sets these procedures at 12:30 in the afternoon if you're supposed to be fasting? This is the
Well, I mean,
dumbest
that's a very
thing
good point. I
ever.
do think you have a very valid point there, but also I think you should follow your doctor's
Screw
instructions.
them. Doctors are stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. So they're just trying
Yeah.
to cover their malpractice butts in
And
case
now
I
you've got this in
aspirate or
recording.
something.
You're totally
Yeah,
got this.
now I've recorded all of it for the posterity. So whatever, I don't care, you know? I'm just irritated that I haven't had my morning coffee yet, but
Yeah, I
that's
can tell you're
okay.
very grumpy.
I know it's just gonna be a grumpy podcast.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? I think I actually really felt that your question was maybe the one of the most ridiculous things you've said in a long while.
It
But
was
you
meant to
believe it.
be. It was meant to be.
But you actually believe it. You've been playing with well, what are we talking about today, Mark?
So today we are talking, well, we're gonna kind of briefly follow the outline of the book that I have read called AI Leadership. Um, actually, that's not the exact quote, but it's pretty much the quote of the book by Geoff Woods. And it's an interesting book about
The book is
using.
called The AI Driven Leader
Oh, yeah, you
by
have a
Geoff
copy, don't you?
Woods. Harnessing AI to make faster, smarter decisions. Just so we're clear about what we're talking about today. Not that my heart didn't stop when you said that we were only going to loosely follow the outline,
You
Mark,
know I
because
can't follow an outline, so
it's your outline, Mark.
it's okay. It's okay. We'll figure it out. Um, so this book has been kind of fun because this is also jumping into my switching over from Chat GTP to Claude um, as my primary AI source. I like Claude, the paid version, because it's more of a closed system. It doesn't kiss my ass constantly, like saying, "Hey, great question," or "You're so smart," or all these other things that Chat GTP just, it's Chat GPT is sort of a sycophant. Um, so Claude is just more matter of a fact. It's just a little bit more analytical. But Geoff Woods basically has come up with the premise that in a system for using a series of prompts about how to use AI as a thought partner and
Capital T, capital P,
with a P, partner,
capital T, capital P.
exactly.
I mean, like he was real intense about that the whole book.
Yes, he was. So the point being is, being a great leader is about asking great questions. And I frequently get stuck on that particular point is I will hear a set of facts or, the outline of a problem or a choke point or something that's going wrong within the firm. And I'm like, I'm having a problem coming up with asking the correct questions, because the way you analyze a problem is you look at the facts and then you ask a series of extremely witty, insightful, um, to the point questions to try to get to the point in the heart of the matter and then come up with some great wisdom. And sometimes figuring out what questions to ask are the hardest things to do. So, what Woods basically, the premise of his book is that you use AI, or can use AI um, as a thought partner. Again, not a thought. That's why I always thought the title of the book was kind of weird, because he talked about AI leadership. This is really about using AI as a thought partner, never to substitute your own judgment, but to help you ask smarter questions. Um, and the way he basically framed it, here's what I actually did. So I asked Claude, my buddy Claude, to assume a role. And I think that's one of the key points here when using AI is you have to give AI a perspective. Assume the role of a business consultant, which is the same thing as, a thought partner. Assume the role as a business consultant. And I'm going to feed you some information about our firm. I fed it my business plan. I fed it our marketing plan. I fed it our vision statement. And then I said, interview me. And I think here's the key: one question at a time. This is the Geoff Woods emphasize it. If you don't tell AI to ask you one question at a time, it will start vomiting. But interview me one question at a time to better understand whatever I'm asking about. I wanted to ask it particularly about how to hire a marketing director. We just hired a marketing director. So interview me one question at a time about our marketing plan and what I want out of a marketing director. And it did. And it asked me one question. I'd give it answers. It took a long time. It probably wouldn't have taken as long time if I had more time, to sit down, at one period. But I would let it ask me questions, and I would go do something else. And then it would let it ask me a few more questions. I'd go do something else. So it took a couple of days, mostly because of my weird schedule. But ultimately what it did, it came back with, number one, a job description and a job title. I asked it to look for salary ranges in the Houston, Texas area. I specifically asked it to go to Indeed.com and other reputable sources, Robert Half and a couple of other places. And it came up with a job description. And I said, great. Now help me write a series of interview questions that would be relevant to help me with this interview process. And I even told it I have 3 potential candidates, and it created me a nice grid so I could have the question, and then I got to have each of the 3 candidates' answers that I wrote down on my notes across the page to basically give me a structure for interviewing that particular position, the marketing director, which she starts tomorrow, by the way. So I just thought this was an interesting concept of using AI to try to help me do a better job in some of these kind of weird tasks that I have to do from time to time, but I don't do on a regular basis. I don't have to interview for a marketing director very often, hopefully only once every 5 or 6 years, tops. So, I'm out of practice on that. So I got it to help me come up with this basic framework for interviewing and going through the process of picking the ultimate superstar marketing director that we know we need.
Yep. So Geoff Woods wrote the book, right? The AI driven leader. And so I think that, so the way he structured the book, Mark, is so part 1 was redefining your leadership in the AI area, basically setting the platform or the reason why why this book is important. And then part 2 is becoming an AI driven leader. Then part 3 was really how you build an AI driven organization, hence your Hey Diana, did you know? So I really think that what he talks about very globally is how to um, I think how to communicate effectively with AI in, as a leader, and then how to do that and build that across your firm or your company, really, and how to use AI to I think the quote that I pulled from the book was how to use AI to quote unquote elevate your strategic thinking, right? So everybody thinks about, okay, I need a strategic plan. I need to be more strategic. I need to think more strategically. But how do you do that? And I think exactly what you just mentioned about, and the use case that you just mentioned is very important or as an example of how you can use AI to do that. But the whole point of the book is using AI to elevate your strategic thinking so that it doesn't replace you, but rather it enhances you, enhances your business. And I think that that's really the point of Geoff Woods's book, Become the AI Driven Leader.
Yeah, I agree, and it's really here's my deep dark secret is sometimes I'm afraid to ask dumb questions because I don't want to look stupid. And I think we all have this fear from time to time, whether we want to admit it or not. But AI doesn't care. So between me and my computer screen AI, I can ask some really dumb questions to AI, and it won't ridicule me. As a matter of fact, if I'm using Chat GTP, it will lie to me and tell me it's the greatest question ever. But you can bounce a lot of stuff that you might not want to say in
Yeah.
front of the people that you're trying to lead.
Yep, I have a very difficult relationship with AI. I think MIT just did a very off the cuff study on people who use AI, and so I'm not going to quote it because it's not a real scientific study. It wasn't funded, but people who use Chat GPT versus the people who actually just did the study that or did studying themselves, and it said that a lot of people who use Chat GPT were just didn't even remember inputting the prompts that they did, and they just actually had the neural complexes were just not as strong after using just Chat GPT. And so I'm very wary of it. And this book,
It
at
can
least it
totally
brought
rot
a
your
lot.
brain.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that this book gives you an opportunity um, to use it in and what I would call smart, not SM, like not the acronym, but just use it in a smart way. So Mark, since you're going to bust the outline, what are we talking about today?
So when we get back from the break, we're going to talk about some of the prompts, the interview style prompts that I have found useful um, to get, to get our buddy Claude to actually understand what our business is. And then there's how can we use it in, as the way Woods calls it, the 4 drivers of growth, which I think we have heard from many, many different authors. I don't think this is anything new or um, original from Geoff Woods, but basically he's trying to apply, how to use AI in the traditional 4 drivers of growth in any sort of organization. Um, and I'm gonna kind of walk you through my journey here about how I've used it. And I will say that I am probably at best mid journey. I still have a lot of different rabbit trails to run down that I have not finished yet. But when we get back, we're going to cover how to talk to Claude.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead and Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
And we're back. All right, Diana. So we're talking about the AI, I'm going to call it the empowerment curve, the interview style prompts for a law firm leader. So, um, you know, one of the hard things I think for most people when they first start playing with AI is they don't understand how to use prompts. They don't understand how to put, it's like garbage in, garbage out. Um, and the prompts you use, the direction you give AI is your results are totally dependent on the questions you ask and what you give it.
Yeah, no, so I think so. Let me just lay out the framework for what he talks about as the AI, what Woods calls the AI empowerment curve. So he walks us through 5 stages, kind of that light bulb moment is stage one. Stage two is the reality check. It's kind of a dip there. And then you build momentum. So you're coming right back up on this curve. Stage four is accelerating progress. And then stage five is expanding what's possible. And so you kind of have this light bulb moment. And I know people can't, or for our listeners, you're kind of starting here, and then you got to go dip down into stage two where you get this reality check, and stage three, four, and five are kind of where you build momentum and kind of really get the most of your use of AI, including your prompts, right, Mark?
Right. So, what I really wanted to get out of this particular process was, what are my blind spots? What am I missing? And so, one of the things I did when I'm sitting here creating this, this concept of creating Claude as my thought partner was, I had to give it a lot of our processes. And a lot of the questions that it asked me in the interview process was, what's next? What's next? What's next? Which, actually makes a lot of sense when you're trying to, work through a process, a procedure, a workflow. Um, and then when I get done with it, so I asked it, I said, what am I missing? And so the question that it asked me was, what do you think is your single biggest bottleneck that's keeping your firm from growing? Which I thought was a very insightful question for Claude to ask me. And I started thinking about that. And, it kept going back to the biggest bottleneck that I kept seeing was me. So many things had to run through me. Um, and I think intuitively I knew that, but to have Claude ask me the question directly really made me think about it, and it really, it prompted me to figure out sort of a lot of the issue on my own.
Yeah, see, I challenge you there, Mark, because I struggle with why is I think the better use of AI is you AI tell me what did you think I've given you. Where do you see the bottleneck, or where do you see the blind spot that I'm missing? Go out into the all the maybe search all my competitors. These are my top 3 competitors. How can I elevate my marketing plan, or what can I do? Go out and look at all their socials. Tell me how I can make my socials look better, or get better engagement than they do.
No, I
Um,
agree totally.
and
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I just was giving you one little light bulb moment that I had. But no, I agree
yeah.
totally. Asking Claude where it sees the bottlenecks, is,
Also, I definitely have told you you're the bottleneck. So I mean, like,
I know,
I
but
don't know.
I
I
never
don't get
believe
any credit.
anything.
You give Claude all the credit, Mark.
I know. Well, it's
I've
kind of
definitely
like,
told you.
my wife says the same thing. She goes, I've been telling you this for years, and then you go to Atticus or something and come back with this great idea. I'm like, yeah, I've been telling you this for years. Like, you don't listen to the people closest to you. You've got to hear it from that third party.
I don't know.
Sorry.
There's a Modern Family episode about this, but I'm not going to digress. And so you like the AI empowerment curve because I think that it really does help. And he brings this back also when in the part 3 where he's talking about how you'll probably have this exact same curve when you introduce AI, or when you're trying to make your law firm, your business, an AI driven business. You're going to have the same type of curve where you're just going to have this moment where, yes, I can use AI for all of these things, and then you kind of hit that bottom where it's like, oh, this reality check is, oh, it sucks. And in my perspective, Mark, I just realized that I'm kind of at the bottom of that AI empowerment curve that he talks about. I feel like right now at our firm, and I mentioned this to you, so don't get mad, but I'm just going to go and tell our listeners, I feel like we're a little bloated right now with tech and people, right? We're in that bottom of the curve where we have too much tech, where we and or maybe too many people in the positions given how much you have invested in tech, where right now we're bloated and I don't know which lever to push. And perhaps I could use AI for that, but I'm not seeing how at this moment.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely have a lot of redundancy within our tech stack right now, and I think that's part of this has nothing to do with AI, but it basically has everything to do with we are in the middle of sort of a technology boom right now, and you have vendors coming out the woodwork, trying to sell you products, and all of their products tend to have overlapping features, and right now, you know, a vendor that's been in business for 18 months is old in this business. I mean, we were talking about this in a couple of podcasts ago about there's so many brand new AI vendors out there that have literally been in business for less than a year. Um, so, figuring out which ones are going to stick, which ones are going to survive and become, which one are going to become VHS and which ones are going to get thrown in the beta bucket. Again, reference, somebody look it up. If you're less than under 40, you have to go look that up. Speaking of which, somebody had a birthday.
I did. We're not going to talk about the number though, but it was a wonderful birthday. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Well, yeah, happy birthday to Diana.
Thank you.
And we won't talk about your age, but you are on the plus side of that 40 number. I do know this for a fact, but
Oh, yes, sir. Well on that side, but thank you so much for not mentioning the number. So next, I think you wanted to talk about the four drivers of growth. Again, not a unique concept, but when do you want to introduce a concept that Woods mentions in his book?
so what he really talks about, so the four drivers of growth that I think come from a lot of different sources that for people who read business books are going to, this is going to, rhyme significantly with what you've heard before, but strategy, execution, people, and technology, where does that, is that a Jim Collins thing or is it a 4DX? I can't remember exactly where this concept comes from, but I think it's pretty well established in the literature. But the four strategies, I mean, I'm sorry, this is the problem when I haven't had my coffee today, is I have a hard time forming words.
This is
So
going to be a fun
this is
podcast.
going to be a fun podcast. I can't form my word. I can't even, I'm not even supposed to be drinking water and I'm sitting here just tripping over things I'm trying to talk about. What I meant to say was the four drivers of growth.
So, Mark, the four drivers of growth, the way that Woods introduces it is that he wants you to balance achieving short-term results and building long-term competitive advantages for sustainable growth. So basically exactly what we were just talking about. I think that, we've introduced so much tech to our firm, and I'm not sure that we have that long-term goal. And in our defense, there's been so much change in the AI world, and of course with the governmental practices, that and in the growth of your Social Security practice, Mark, that it's kind of hard to keep all that in place. And so he introduces the four drivers of growth, again, just that strategy, execution, people, and technology, so that you're trying to drive growth without really disrupting your organization. And so, as you mentioned, that first one is strategy, basically the competitive advantage that you're building in the long term through the actions you're taking in the short term.
Right. So some of the examples of the prompts, the questions that come out, either you might put into it or the AI might pop out asking you, like the first one that when I did this exercise was AI basically came in and said, what is your most profitable type of case? And of course I told him, the insurance side, it's always more profitable to sue an insurance company than it is to sue the government for a whole host of obvious reasons. But the question was, well, why aren't you marketing harder for them? That was the question, because it was looking at our budget allocation and how we allocated our budget between marketing for insurance cases, marketing for SSD cases, marketing for VA cases, and so forth. You know, and that was a legitimate question. Why aren't you putting more budget towards your most profitable cases? That's a strategy question. If another firm entered your market tomorrow with unlimited resources, where would you still have a competitive advantage, what they would call a moat? Legitimate question. And how would you answer that question? Because AI is asking you, well, what would you do? Which parts of your strategy are based on habit? I really didn't understand that question, but I thought it was sort of interesting that it popped out. I guess, but it's true. Sometimes we just form bad habits. We do things because it's always been done that way.
Well,
And
yeah,
it's
that's
challenging me on it.
I think that that's exactly the question. Every time I'm like, "Oh, Mark, why don't we try doing this?" And you're like, "Oh, well, I tried it and it doesn't work." And so I think that that's the flip side of that question is what are you doing now because you think that it's still working rather than trying new initiatives. And one of the questions from the book that I really liked is what does our org chart look like to support this vision? Because obviously that's a much more in the weeds type question that I have to struggle with all the time is what does we do not let go of people here. We don't riff. I think, Mark, you said that in one of our earliest podcasts. You have never done a layoff in this firm. And so repurposing our people to hire more, client contact type positions as we leverage technology for more consistency, I think, and faster results, I think, is the way that we're thinking about it. And so what does our org chart look like to support this vision was a great strategic question. So then moving next to the second driver of growth that Woods talks about is, of course, execution. In other words, your strategic plan.
Right. So good questions that come out, where do our cases stall most often? In other words, where are our choke points? That's always an execution question. And AI can kind of help you with that especially when you feed it in the process, you feed it in your procedures. And you simply either it asks you or you ask it, depending on where you are in the interview process, where are the choke points? Where could we do this better? With an eye of critical thinking. Again, why do we do this the way we do? Maybe it's just because this is always the way we've done it. Could it be done better?
Yep. So I think that the question that I like from execution is like, what talent, resources, or technology might you need to kind of get where you're trying to go? And so the question, I think that the point that Woods is making here is you have to be crystal clear about where you want to go. And then you take action. I think that sometimes we get so excited about like, okay, this is the new technology, the new thing, that light bulb moment that he was talking about earlier, that we forget what we're trying to achieve and then we just execute without doing that. And so that's I think the cautionary tale that I took from it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he meant it to be cautionary. So, but then of course the third one, something we're very familiar with, Mark, of course, is our people. So the third driver is people, getting the right people in the right seats, doing the right things and growing in the right direction.
Right. So, one of the best questions that I got out of it that I really liked was, what are the critical skills that we lack today that we need to be able to compete with in the next 3 years? What are we lacking in terms of skill sets? When skill sets is all about your people. And I remember when that question came up, I kind of struggled with it. Like, what are we lacking? Um, you know, um, and again, I think one of the things that I kind of come up with is that, and I know we've talked about this and we're working on it, but a training program um, to keep not only our new hires up to speed, but to keep our current people up to speed as well. We've talked about starting MWA University and the training program that we're developing. So I think we're on the road to fixing that.
Yep. So, Mark, what I think you're really saying, in so many other words that I think that Woods would say, is that you want to make sure that your people are aligned with your strategic plan, and making sure your people know how to act and how to get you where you want to go.
Right. And that means processes, training, reinforcement, the whole cycle. Just keep it going. And whether they're new people or whether they're people that have been with you for years, you just never assume anything when it comes to your people know and to remember what processes. And again, there's that habit word again. You got to make sure that bad habits haven't crept into the system.
And then the fourth driver of growth, Mark, that he brings up is the technology portion, of course. Harnessing technology to raise the productivity of your people, increase the efficiency of your organization, and create innovative products and services for your customers.
Yeah. So in our world, we're a service industry. It's not like we're really creating a whole lot of new products. We're basically there to solve people's problems. But how we deliver that service, obviously, um, can improve, especially through the use of technology. We've talked about our use of case status. We've talked about our, client communication, things of that nature. So I think what AI is really doing here is like, what technology could we add? That was the question. What technology we could add that could reduce friction in the client service process?
So the way that I think about it, Mark, is what technology can we and can you invest in to free up your people to deliver higher value toward your goals? Or basically, how can you use technology in the operation side more efficiently so you get the same result with maybe less effort or less people, less time, doing more with less, right? And I think that that's the real benefit, not just of AI, but also of technology. And so while he talks about the four drivers of growth, the part that I really kind of wanted to close out this segment with, Mark, is the prompts and the personas that Woods mentions. Because I think that for me, when I read this book, this was the real heart and the meat of the book. So I kind of want to close out the segment here talking about the three personas. And Mark, do you want to introduce those?
Yes. So the first one, and what we've kind of talked about, is the interviewer. So one of the things that I've talked about here is that I've allowed Claude, my buddy Claude, now to ask me questions, and I don't put a limit on the number of questions that Claude wants to ask. So I ask it, interview me, get what you need out of me in order to fully understand the way our business runs, to fully understand what challenges we have, to fully understand, our goals, where we want to go in the future, what our limitations are, maybe what my personal limitations are, but basically to act as the interviewer to dig deeper.
Yep. So it asks the interviewer kind of acts like a skilled journalist asking smart questions to uncover great ideas that you didn't know you had. And so I really like that one, I think. So what's some of the questions you've asked it, Mark?
Um, well, so I asked it, what are the threats out there that I'm not seeing? Then it took me down a series of questions because we do a lot of work on government regulated cases, through government agencies. It started asking me a lot of questions about what I thought about the political environment, what I thought about, budget cuts, what I thought about the potential over the next few years about, what what's the percentage of likelihood that the Democrats would take back over Congress and change, some policies regarding funding of the Social Security Administration. It got down detailed into those types of little questions, and I'm like, good God, I have no idea who's going to win the next election. But I mean, but I think what it was trying to do is like, hedge. It's kind of coming up with some probabilities. But that was a very long rabbit trail that we went down. Was what are the potential threats out there that I'm not seeing?
Yeah, but I think that Woods might say that that whole exercise that you mentioned earlier about how you created that marketing director position, the marketing director interview questions, and then of course that grid that it ultimately developed for you for the interviews the final interviews. That's obviously the interviewer persona that he mentioned, and so the second persona is the communicator.
Now, this one I had a little bit more of a hard time wrapping my head around.
So Woods describes it as a super smart assistant that turns complex ideas into simple, powerful messages. It organizes your thoughts and determines the best way to share ideas so everyone understands. Woods says earlier that if you're just using, or in the book, he says, like, if you're just using AI to draft you emails, you're probably not harnessing the power of AI. But I think this is an example where, you can use it to break down a complex strategic, like your five your 5-year vision, Mark, that we do through EOS. How do I take this 5-year vision, or even, Mark, how long is your business plan for 2025?
Um, how long is the plan?
Yeah, it's probably about 20 pages, right?
Oh, the business plan. Yes, it's about 20 pages. Yes.
I would think that this wod be a good way to say, "Hey, let me, I want to introduce this to my team, like on your monthly all staff, and then use this type of communicator persona to say, okay, what am I really saying in kind of layman's terms?"
Right. No, how could I lay this out to my staff? How could I lay this out in such a way that they could easily consume it, digest it, understand it, not be afraid of it? um, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That was a good idea. See, this is
Thank
why I
you,
hire
Mark.
you. This is why I
This is
hire
this
you.
is why this is why you hired me. Let's
Yes.
not forget that one. But my favorite persona is the challenger.
Yes. So the challenger. So challenge my assumptions. Um, everything you do has a built-in set of assumptions, whether you realize it or not. And sometimes that might be the first question: what assumptions am I making? And then, are these assumptions valid or not? And to challenge those assumptions. So, um, for example, we assume um, when we do our revenue calculations for the year, we assume that we're going to close a certain percentage of cases over the next 12 months. Maybe that assumption should be challenged. And maybe that's a question that Claude might come out. Are you sure that this particular formula that you're using, is correct? Where do you get this data from?
Yeah, so Woods describes the challenger persona as an impartial judge. It questions your assumptions, poking holes in your arguments, and pushing you to consider alternative perspectives. And so, I think that we should maybe back up a little bit. And what I think the value of this book, as well as if you do want to sign up for his newsletter, if you don't want to invest in a whole nother book, I still recommend our listeners sign up for his newsletter. And that's Geoff with a G, of course. It's GEOFF Woods. Sign up for his newsletter because he will actually give you prompts on the all the prompts. And so the book has the prompts on, like for example, in one of my emails, because I do subscribe to his email, it says it'll give you the full prompt. And this was one that I pulled up for this podcast as a challenger. So he says, I want you to be my strategic thought partner in understanding and preparing for interactions with blank. So, for example, I think the best way that I've thought about this is inevitably, especially at the level of growth that you're at, Mark, we have interpersonal relationship challenges. Is
Oh,
that fair to say?
fair to say.
So the way that I have thought, and the way that Geoff Woods in one of his emails suggested that we do this, he did it in the context of a board, but not many law firms actually have a board, and definitely not in the way that, like, for example, oil and gas companies, even private ones, have a true board. So I'm going to make it applicable to, for example, just a leadership team. So if you have any conflict within a leadership team, what the way that he suggested it and the way that I would use it is dump all of the disc tests, the what we would call any hiring tests, that whether that's the Myers-Briggs, the J test. Mark, you paid someone to do a very expensive test for our EOS. Dump all that information in there and then create this prompt using the challenger persona to say, okay, well, now I've got to bring up this very difficult issue to my leadership team. How would this person or series of people respond to it and help me navigate responses to their objections? And I think the email will help you craft those types of prompts. So it's not, I mean, for me, it's like, okay, do what? You want me to create a prompt? But no, the prompts are all there, guys. It's in the book, it's in the emails. You don't have to come up with it on your own. So highly recommend that you guys do that.
All right. So here's how I would view the challenger. And this is kind of a unique thing that I think I read in the book that you mentioned creating a advisory board of directors, something like that. You could actually create multiple personas like, hey, uh, give me give me a persona to challenge me from somebody that's very aggressive, and then give me a second challenger from somebody who might be very conservative, or give me a challenger from somebody who has more of this type of personality or that type of personality. You can kind of set up this board of different vantage points um, that could give you different perspectives in challenging your ideas. All of this, leads to our final segment when we're going to go over Marc and Diana's 5 action steps going forward on how to use AI as your thought partner.
This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Remember, Marc is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze.
And we're back. All right, so we're going to close out today, Diana, with the 5 action steps going forward. I will start. So my first action step is to run one interview style session with AI this week. I ask me questions about my 2025 growth plan until I can explain it like I'm on a witness stand. I think that's where I would start. Before I would do that, I would kind of feed it some, if you have it available, if you do have a business plan, if you do have a marketing plan, I would give it some background real quickly on what your firm is and make sure you have it assume a persona as a business consultant, a strategic advisor, something along those lines. Give it a role. Don't just start without telling it what perspective it has to come from. But run one interview style session with AI this week.
That's a great one, Mark. I probably should start using it just because I'm so anti AI right now. So, the second action step from us this week is to sign up for Geoff Woods newsletter, guys. I understand we all have too many books that we want to read. And so, I think that if you want to get the book and just select one of the prompts that he gives you in the book, I think that's also a great step. But just signing up for the newsletter, it's really easy. Geoff Woods. I don't know the website, but Geoff Woods is how you spell his name. And then, so it's free newsletter and he'll give you prompts and you can copy and paste, adapt it. Like, so for example, how I adapted the board prompt to, maybe a challenging leadership team issue.
All right. So what I would say, my next one is to use AI to identify a blind spot. Use the challenger prompts that we talked about earlier to stress test your current assumptions. You always want to be challenged. You always want to make sure that you're stress testing your theories, your business plan. Could it be done better? So that's what I would say is ask it, where are my blind spots?
Yeah, I think that one's a good one, Mark, especially because obviously by definition, you don't know what those are. So
No, I
the
don't.
AI might be a good one. So number 4, I think for me would be to integrate AI into your leadership meetings. And, I struggle with this one, but I think one of the best things that I can say is that right now where we are in our EOS journey, I'm finding that a lot of our teams are getting rote in their EOS and their level 10 journey. And so we do have the no issues as an issue set of questions that our implementer has given us. But I also think that there's a great way to use AI to maybe perhaps create 5 tough questions for your team so that they make sure that they're staying on their toes and asking questions about their departments, maybe even your leadership team that you haven't thought to ask.
All right. Let's see. We are on our last one. I would say appoint an AI champion. Someone in the firm responsible for testing new prompts and teaching them to the team. Not everybody in your firm, and especially in my firm of 60, 70 some odd people, are going to be very into this whole concept of AI. So you need to identify that person, just like you have to identify that tech person in your firm that knows how to fix things when things break. You want to identify somebody in your firm to really push and advance the whole concept of using AI in your firm. That might be you, but chances are it may not be you, especially if you're my age. Find that whiz kid within your firm that really gets into AI and can figure out how to use AI to integrate into the operations within your firm.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I would say it's most definitely, regardless of your age, not going to be the managing partner because you're going to need someone who's in the weeds to kind of be that champion. I think that this is probably yet another one of those business concepts that's not unique to AI, but I would found, and this one hit home a lot more recently with one of our implementations, that AI threatens your team. They definitely see it as potentially replacing them, so I found that they are going to push back a lot more in implementing AI than they would any of your other technologies, say a client portal, which we did with case status, just because I think the threat of it is just so much greater. And so having an AI champion, like Mark mentioned, someone who's in the weeds is going to kind of be that person. It's like, oh no, it saved me this much time by using X, Y, and Z for this purpose is the kind of one of the best ways to make sure you get uniform application throughout your firm.
Right. All right. Any final thoughts before we check out of here, Diana, on how you love AI so much?
Actually, my final thought, Mark, I'm going to be the challenger without being your AI bot. I think that sometimes we rely on AI too much, and we need to challenge our brain before we move to AI. And I think that that would be what I would, really recommend that all of our listeners, including Mark, do is maybe think about really use the benefit of everything that you've learned in your 30 years of practice, plus everything that you know about your industry and then go to AI. And
Right.
then perhaps our results will be a lot greater.
Yeah. Don't let AI rot your brain. It just,
Not that that's what the MIT study said. I'm just being
that's
very
what
clear.
Mark
That is
said.
not what the MIT study said. I actually went back to the MIT website to make sure I understood before I even brought it up on today's podcast. That is not what the study said, and it was a very small. It was a study, but it was a small study. But don't forget your humanity. That's what I would say.
Yeah. So before we go, can I sing you happy birthday?
Oh, no, sir, but thank you. I don't know that you
Please.
can do that without coffee.
My acapella is awesome.
I
Uh,
have no doubt. I have no doubt, sir. And thank you for not having AI do that for you. I appreciate the genuine offer and the humanity of that.
I didn't think about that. AI could generate a happy birthday song for you.
I'm sure there's an email
Okay,
right
that will be
now.
next week. Next week we'll do that.
All right. Thanks, sir.
All right, I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark,
And I'm Diana.
and together we are the dynamic duo of law. So remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. And if you enjoyed this podcast, remember to forward it onto a friend. Just hit that little forward button there, and visit us at successfulbarrister.com. And don't forget to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead and Associates, a national disability law firm, at disabilitydenials.com. And with that, we're out of here.
Bye.